All right. We have not a different podcast. We have a cool podcast with somebody who some of you might not even know at all. Actually, probably all of you probably don't know this guy yet. But he's about to star in one of the greatest hunt films I've seen in a long time. And he actually won the opportunity to have this hunt through Leupold to their Project Hunt series. And our mutual friend Luke Dusenberry filmed it, and I got to meet Cody Austin at TAC in Montana, and I was like, "Dude, you got to come on the podcast and tell the story and kind of talk about your life and everything going on." So, Cody, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me. This is my first time ever being on a podcast, so we get to have this experience together.
That's good. It's always you always have to have your first at some point. So, gotta keep this G-rated. So Cody applied for Project Hunt. There's some circumstances behind that and why he applied for it and why he was chosen. But he ended up winning this Project Hunt from Leupold, filming this entire elk hunt, deep in the backcountry, horses, the whole nine, outfitter camp, killing a good bull. And then now it was the feature film of Big Sky Tack, which is like, in my opinion, it's the mecca of tacks. And he was the star of the show. A whole dinner on Saturday night was dedicated to Cody and this film. So, Cody, how are you doing?
Really great. That whole night it still seems like it didn't really happen. Uh, like the whole experience itself, like from the beginning of Project Hunt till now, I'm glad it got filmed and I'm glad that it'll like live forever on YouTube because it came in by it came by so quickly and it doesn't seem like it was real, you know. I It couldn't have worked out any better from start to finish. And sometimes you have bad luck in life, and sometimes you have really, really good luck. And that time, it was really good luck for me.
Yeah, man, and like you're like hobnosing with Randy Newberg, and I think Randy Newberg actually said this was like the best project hunt he's ever seen as well. I mean, you're kind of a big deal now, dude. You're almost famous in the tax space and hunting space.
Yeah, I got to meet Randy at TAC, and what I didn't know until we got there, my family, my parents, and my girlfriend and I all went out for that event. When we got there and actually talked to some of the Leupold guys, they're like, "Yeah, we showed Randy this before we actually told you that you were the winner, if I remember that correctly." And Randy was really touched by it, and he wanted to meet you. And so, like when I walked up to him on that Friday of TAC and met him, like he knew who I was already. He was thrilled. I was more thrilled. It was awesome. It's like I've watched his content for many years, and I've watched it for many years because he was a guy that has been in the industry for a while that's done things the right way and done things for all of the right reasons. So
Yeah.
I've really gravitated towards his content and other people like him.
And not only that, he came from out east and moved out west. So he's like one of you because you're not from out west. You've hunted. This is your first time ever hunting elk. Where do you live again?
I live right now. Well, my hometown is Belleville, Wisconsin. I was living in New Glarus. Some people that are going to listen to this podcast will know where New Glarus is. They're famous for the New Glarus Brewing Company. So, uh, New Glarus slash Belleville, Wisconsin. Yeah, Randy's from Minnesota. Midwest guys get to meet each other. I think we both have the gift of gab. So we had a good conversation for like probably close to an hour that first day.
Oh, it's awesome. And yeah, I got to talk to him too. Like, I don't really get starstruck often, but getting to meet Randy Newberg and just tell him, like, Randy, like, I don't think you understand. Like, I didn't know how to hunt like big game, and I listened to your content and listened to your podcast, and that's a big part of how I learned how to hunt. Like, he puts out some of the most wholesome and like beneficial content on the internet, right? Like, it's just you can learn from Randy. You can learn what bullets to use from Randy. You can learn what caliber to use from Randy. You can learn how to hunt elk from Randy. It's by listening to him and understanding things, understanding the different seasons of elk. You know, early season, late season, rut. Um, I think there's one more in between there, but he just teaches so much, and he is a plethora of knowledge, and he wants people to learn. That's everything about Randy. He's an advocate not only for himself and his brand, but for RMEF, right? For new hunters and for growing the hunting space.
Yep.
Yeah, and the byproduct of that is he's done really well with his stuff as well. But his main focus has always been other people, which has been so cool to do. So you're not a big elk hunter, right? You're not a big out west guy. You're from Wisconsin, probably a Packers fan. I'm sorry, right?
Yep.
Probably, okay, he's a Packers fan. All right, anyone who's
Yeah.
listening. Newberg's a Vikings fan. Surprised you guys even talk to each other. I'm sure. Well, maybe he's not a Vikings fan. I assume he is from Minnesota, but
He probably is. Yeah.
probably is.
I'm not like die hard though. Like the Packers are really, really good at getting to the playoffs, and they're really, really good at losing in them. So
Yeah,
I kind of like, I kind of just, I'm a little immune to all that every year. It's like, darn.
yeah.
Um, but of course, football season coincides with hunting season, right? So I haven't ever really gotten that big into watching football, mainly because I would rather be hunting, unless it's a night game, of course. And then, all right, I'll turn it on.
They could have titled this film "A Cheesehead Goes West," but it wouldn't have been as classic, I guess. Um,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was my first elk hunt. I grew up deer hunting, squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, pheasant hunting, waterfowl with my dad.
so from a
So
young age, right? When did you start deer hunting back there? Because that's kind of how this has to start, right? Because you're pretty obsessed.
yeah, so back when I was 12, that was the as early as you could start legally hunting in Wisconsin was age 12 back then. Now, if you take the online hunter safety course or hunter safety course, you can pretty much go at any age. So there's like 6 and 7 year olds that are going as long as they have like a mentor with them. But yeah, age 12. But I was shooting a bow from like age 3 or 4 uh, with my
Mhm.
dad and hunting, fishing from that age too. Like I remember one of my first things I remember from fishing was actually my dad. So what happened was I woke up one morning. I remember this vividly. My mom's like, Cody, you have a bite. And I had just like woke up from like out of the tent. We were camping right by the lake. And I run out and reel in this really nice smallmouth bass. And like years later, I remember um, asking my mom about that. She's like, your dad actually like put that, you know, put a treble hook on, ran it through his mouth and let him like swim out. And then, it was kind of all rigged, but it was effective.
Yeah, you
uh,
have to do it. I mean, like my kids, I don't know if they actually hit a duck the first couple of seasons duck hunting when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. But I definitely you find a way to shoot at the same time as them, make them think they got it right.
yep.
Let them shoot cripple. Like they have no problem shooting a cripple off the water, and then they got that one too, right?
Yep.
But you have to do that to make them excited. I mean, it's all part of being a good dad, man.
Right. Yeah. That's like your job
It's
as
your job,
dad.
yeah, to lie to your kids about certain things like that. But it's a good lie.
Yeah. Right.
So you go. I mean, you're obsessed with hunting, right? We've talked off air before already, and
Yep.
hunting is your passion. That's
Yep.
what you do. Back there, Wisconsin, how many deer can you guys shoot a year?
Um, so like with my bow, it depends on the county, of course. Certain counties, like if I buy an archery license and a gun license, I can shoot a buck with both of those weapons. And then it'll ask you what counties you're going to be hunting in, let's say, for each weapon. For me, it's Green. So with Green County, last year they gave out, I think, 3 doe tags per weapon. So
Okay.
up to 8. Um, we have a good herd down here in southern Wisconsin. Farther up north, like where there's a wolf problem, you get a buck tag and probably not a doe tag. Um, so
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So it's not as like they're not as prevalent as they are in some of these other states, where they're just like giving out as many tags as you want, but there's still a ton of deer.
Yeah.
And are you harvesting a few bucks and a few does a year, or a buck and a few does a year? How you doing it?
For me, I just try to shoot bucks. I know there's plenty, like all the land that my dad and I hunt here is all private land, and I know like the people around us are shooting does. So um, I kind of just shoot the bucks. Last year I shot one buck with my bow. Then with my rifle, I get more selective, and I shot a buck in 2022, and that was the first time I'd shot a deer with a rifle since like 2017 or something like that. So
Really?
yeah,
Just love the
um,
bow too much.
I no, I get them with the bow pretty much every year. Um, there's more opportunities that way.
So are you hunting? I'm just curious. I know we're gonna get to the whole hunt story thing, but um, are you hunting tree saddles? Are you hunting tree stands? How are you doing this?
Tree stands. I do have a tree saddle, like one of the original. I think it's called the tree saddle. I got it from my uncle Brian. He gave me his old tree saddle, and I've used that. Like what I do for a living, I'm a municipal arborist, so I have a climbing harness at work that's very similar to a tree saddle setup. That being said, like what I realized when I'm in a tree saddle hunting is you kind of move around a lot just because you have the ability to do it. Like you just like start to fidget a lot. So I found myself moving around a lot. Not that I think that affected me seeing deer, but it was one of those things too where if you don't have a place to put your feet necessarily, that's like a stand, like a platform. Like when you draw your bow, you're pretty much drawing at like your all upper body. Like you have nowhere for like your core to be, ready, I guess. This so it was like harder to draw unless you got your feet in a good spot with the tree saddle. And with a
Yeah.
tree stand, it's not even something you think about it, but
So
yeah.
Tethered sent me one, and I actually have a platform for my feet that came with it.
Okay.
So I stand
Yeah.
on that. But it was scary because I've never done like I'm out west. We don't hunt out of trees really. Some people do, and
Yep.
like I was like out there doing it, and it was like, oh wow, I need to go do this like 3 or 4 more times if I'm going to do this during season because
Yep.
I feel like I'm gonna. Once I learned to like just trust the harness, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Right? It was when I was like trying to hug the tree and go up the tree, and like once I learned to go, I can lean back and be fine. Which I'm sure you being an arborist
Yeah.
all day long, not a big
Yeah.
deal.
It's the same thing like when we're learning how to climb a tree for work. They always tell you trust your system. And that's the same thing with tethered or any of the tree saddles. Like those those setups are rated for thousands of pounds worth of force, so like just trust it, it's not going to break or anything. But yeah, like if you're not really paying attention, you kind of lean back and one, you're like, oh, it like
Yeah.
catches you a little bit.
Yeah, I ended up getting going. I have a 34-inch Bowtech, the SS34. I ended up
Okay.
just picking up a 30-inch the Hoyt RX8,
Yep.
and because like trying to shoot that bigger bow out of the tree side, I was like, this is too big of a bow. Like I want a smaller bow.
Yeah.
Um, I am drawing 70 pounds too, and I'm kind of like, I almost want to drop that bow down to 60 because of that same reason, because it's all upper body. It's a really awkward draw for me to draw back
Yeah.
to shoot that thing out of the tree. So I don't know what people are doing. If they're, I mean, do you guys all out back there? Are you all shooting super heavy bows, or you're only shooting 30 yards, right? You don't need a heavy bow, right?
My bow, I have an RX3 Ultra. That's pretty heavy. um Plus I got two stabilizers on it.
I mean not heavy. I
uh
mean like heavy poundage. Like
oh,
what poundage? Yeah.
I'm at 65.
Yeah.
uh But where I hunt, it's southern Wisconsin. Like I sit right on the edge of a field. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
You're making some
I
pokes
can,
sometimes. Like, what's your like? You
I
can shoot
could.
60 yards sometimes, or
I practice like out to 80, but I never would shoot that. I don't think I'd shoot over 50 at a deer.
okay, that's good. And you're hunting all private back there. Is that a hard thing to get permissions for still, or is it like you guys just known somebody forever and you get access?
Yeah, it's actually it's the farm right down the road from my parents' house. They live out in the country south of town, and the people that own it don't actually even live there. They live the closest one lives in Duluth, Minnesota. So they're 6 hours away, and I barter with them. I do tree work for them, like as needed, kind of a thing. I'll go over. They have 120 acres. It's like uh, 84, 85 of it's tillable. So it's mostly field with some woods. And I'll cut up trees that fall from the woods over into the field for them, and it's like stuff like that. And then in the winter, my dad and I keep it plowed, like the snow plowed to the house to make it look like somebody lives there. That's kind of the trade off. And then they let us hunt. So
That's worth it to me, right? A little bit of work, and you
yeah,
get to you got to kind of pay to play a lot of this stuff. So that's not bad. It's better than
yeah,
having a $20,000 lease, whatever you guys are paying for leases back there. I'm not sure what they are, but they're expensive.
yeah. Plus, we always give Dave, the owner, when he comes down. Uh, if we get a deer, we'll give him like burger and summer sausage. And when I killed my elk, I gave him a couple things of elk meat. So I
That's
think
cool.
he liked that. So
That's cool. Well, so with that said, you've got a hunting background. You love it. Obviously, a family guy. You and your dad hunt together. Uh,
yeah,
you put in for Project Hunt, and they didn't just pick you because you cut trees down. They kind of always
right,
it's
yeah,
always a special circumstance behind these hunts and why they do them. Um,
yeah,
so I know when Luke heard your circumstance, he was like, 100%, I'm in. I want to do this hunt. I want to film it. And he actually told me that a year ago whenever you guys were doing it. So, Austin, what's going on with you? What? How did this all come about? And just give us the background story of this.
yeah. So um, what I came to find out later on, but so I've had multiple sclerosis for since 2018. We know that because I went to the Mayo Clinic. And they told me, I kind of gave them a timeline of potential symptoms that I had had since 2018. I remember it was 2018 because it was like rifle deer season of 2018, right around Thanksgiving here in Wisconsin, and I had like this like numbness like right around my belly button, and it like actually grew to around my whole midsection. It felt like I was wearing a belt of numbness, and that's like it came on and it was there for like 6 weeks, and then it kind of went away. It went away for a while. It went away for like a year and a half. Like, never really thought much of it because it went away, and it didn't affect my life at all. And it came back in 2020 and did the same thing for about the same amount of time and went away. And then in 2022, right before my birthday, which is in the beginning of June, I started to get like well, what we came to find out was it's called a flare up, like it's an exacerbation of disease activity. Um, like my feet were kind of numb, and then like my wrist all the way up to my shoulder was numb on both arms, like posterior side. So from like the outside of my arm all the way up was like I could take like a paper clip and like poke myself, and like I could tell something was touching me, but I couldn't, like it didn't hurt at all. And that one affected my life. That one was like I had no dexterity in my arms, like I couldn't even draw back my bow. I couldn't work. Um, there was something definitely wrong. And so um, my doctor and I were talking about it, and she's like, I need to get you an MRI of your neck, so a cervical MRI. I'm like, okay. There was like just Googling my symptoms, there was probably a dozen different things that came up. One of them
Yeah,
being MS. I
don't
didn't really.
Google symptoms. Everybody listening,
Right,
don't Google.
right, right. Yeah. But so I got that MRI. That was on July 22nd of 2022. I remember that day. That was a Friday. Um, had that in the afternoon, went home, uh, my doctor calls me at like 6 o'clock that night,
Oh,
and I
geez.
saw that call coming through. I'm like, oh, hopefully this is good news. Um, Actually, by the time so like my symptoms from that flare up started, like, we'll say, towards the end of May. By the time I had my MRI on July 22nd, like, my symptoms were gone actually. So I didn't
Mm.
really think like that MRI was gonna yield anything. Um, she calls me up and says, "We found 3 lesions on your spinal cord in your neck." I'm like, "Oh, okay. What are those? What's that mean? Like, what is that?" Like, I actually have a biology degree, but I what my wheelhouse is not the human anatomy. And she's like, "We're not really sure." Um, so what's going to happen next is I'm going to be talking with the neurology team at the University of Wisconsin. I'm 30 minutes from that, like right in Madison, and that's also where I work. So uh, I'm like, okay, I guess keep me in the loop then. She's like, I will. I'm going to be talking to them over this weekend. Like, okay. Monday rolls around, and I was actually in the shower. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on that Monday following. And she calls me again, and I'm in the shower. So I answered it. And she's like, "So I have a hospital room lined up for you at the hospital. I need you to pack a bag for at least one night, if not two. You're going to come into the hospital. You're going to get an MRI of your head. You're going to get 3 rounds of anti-inflammatory steroids, and you're going to get a lumbar puncture or spinal tap.
Mhm.
And then we're going to send that off to a bunch of labs. We're going to test it." And I'm like, I was freaking out, and I go, like, am I dying? Like, I remember feeling so helpless. And she's like, "No, we lined it up this way because we don't think that anything's wrong with you right now, that you need to be in the hospital. It just happens to be that." So, like, that was kind of coming off the tail end of the epidemic or pandemic, COVID. And they're like, if we get them the hospital room, we can get all of these tests done in one swoop rather than making him come in for this day and then, like, wait a
Mhm.
couple weeks and come in for the other thing. So they got it all done, and I was in the hospital for 2 nights, 3 days. So I go into the hospital. Um, I get the MRI of my head done like that Monday night, like at 8 p.m. They get it done. Then when I was done with that, I started my steroids. The next morning rolls around. It's Monday morning. They give me the lumbar puncture, um, and then I keep getting the rounds of steroids. Monday afternoon, I met with a neurologist, came into my room, and she goes, "All right, so if we found a couple more lesions in your actually in your spinal, like your spinal column, where it kind of connects into the brain." And I go, like, at the time, I'm like, I Googled what could cause lesions, and I played football one year in high school. um, I know that I've had concussions before. Could these lesions be caused by impact? She's like, certainly, and like, neurologists are so good at, like, being cool as a cucumber. Luckily,
Mhm.
um, she was fantastic. She's like, so we're just gonna send off your spinal fluid, and you're gonna stay here another night, okay? And then so I was discharged from the hospital that Tuesday morning. Uh, I don't remember the exact date, but then they had scheduled me before I was discharged to meet with uh, a neurologist the following week on August 4th of 2022. I think that was like, that's just standard operating procedure after you go through an event like that. Like, by that point, you're going to have all your test results back from your lumbar puncture, and they're going to go over them with you. Well, so with multiple sclerosis, you can't be diagnosed based on one test. It has to be at least two positives. So I had a positive with the MRI activity, the spinal cord lesions, and then all of my test results kept coming in on my chart, and I kept getting those notifications on my chart on my phone every time I get a test result back. So I kept opening it and looking at it. Everything was coming back fine. Like, you're fine. You don't have ALS. You don't have Lyme's disease. You don't have Guillain-Barré. Um, some really heavy stuff that they tested for, and luckily they tested for like 26 different things. Um, and then the one thing that came back was I had a positive for an abnormal amount of oligoclonal bands in my spinal fluid, which, from what I've gathered, is evidence that a demyelination process occurred. Essentially, I had my immune system attacking my central nervous system, causing those lesions on my spinal cord. And there's evidence of that in my spinal fluid itself. So there was a breakdown of the myelin, and that's evident. I think that's what that all means. So yeah, I was diagnosed August 4th, 2022 with MS. And that, I mean, that's a heavy thing to have, right? That's
How old are you at the time?
I was 32 at the time. Uh, what I've come to learn about MS is it's like one of the most widely diagnosed diseases among people like our age and younger in the United States. Um, so I took the time to grieve that, and then I took the time to educate myself on the disease. I had an uncle that had MS, but he was an uncle by marriage, so nobody blood related had the disease prior to me. Um, and within a month and a half of being diagnosed, my doctor who diagnosed me was able to get um, clearance through my insurance to start my treatment program. And so that was like that.
You're good.
Oh, I'm still good. Uh,
No, keep going.
okay. So with my treatment program, it's an infusion once every 6 months. And how that works is it kills my B cell white blood cells. So I'm walking around every day with part of my immune system. And over the course of 6 months, then it kind of grows back. And then 6 months later, I get another infusion and it knocks it down. And it basically works by preventing my immune system from attacking my central nervous system. And so far, it's showing effectiveness, efficacy. Uh, they know that by I have to go in and get MRIs every year now to check disease activity to see if I have any new lesions. And last year in 2023, in early September, I had my follow up ones, went in and got those, and it showed no more new lesions. This year, I have the same thing. I'm just like, you know, I'm at the mercy of the healthcare system now, and it sucks. It sucks, but there's a lot of people in this world that have it a lot worse than me. So I try to keep that in mind. Like, I haven't changed anything about like physically how I live my life from day to day. I'm still able to go to work. I'm still able to go exercise. I can go hunting, fishing. There's literally nothing that I do that's any different than what I did before I was diagnosed.
Now, I'm ignorant to this whole to MS. Is this something that is going to get you like in the next 15 years? Like you will like it is going to start getting worse, or is it like Is that expected, or are you just trying to prevent right now? Is that you're kind of doing like preventative stuff, or can they actually like harness this thing for the rest of your life?
So the way that the research suggests right now with my drug and other biosimilars like it, basically it takes your condition that you're in right now, and it stops the disease from progressing, or it slows it. Stops or slows it. So like all of the MS research statistics you can look up currently are kind of based on like old statistics. Like right now, if you Google it, I'm probably 50% likely to get progressive MS, where you can like you would look at me and you could tell I have like I have a cane or I have a walker. But that those statistics aren't like we don't have that data from 2017. It's pretty new from when Ocrevus that I'm on was FDA approved, and there's other drugs that have been FDA approved since then. Moving forward, this disease looks a lot more manageable than it used to. But to answer your question, 15 years from now, I do have a chance where I won't be able to do the things that I'm doing now. Hopefully, that's not the case. Um, there's stem
Mhm.
cell transplants that work. Uh, when I've looked into that, that's I have to go to Mexico or Turkey or even Russia, get a stem cell transplant where basically my immune system is totally wiped out, and I'm like an infant for like I don't know 3 months, 2 months, 2 months, 3 months, where if I get sick, I can die with that treatment. That being said, people have really good results with those, but they're like 50,000 plus dollars out of your own money.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is your own money, and typically like your insurance will not cover something like that because it's still considered like a high risk kind of thing. So it's risky.
But man, praise God that like medical science is where it's at today, right? Because like I would when I was hearing this, I'm like, oh man, like he's gonna be like just breaking down over the next 10 years, and he's not. And like, man, that's so rad that I'm not. No matter what, this is terrible, but it's so awesome that we live in a time where 20 years ago this would have been I don't know if it's a death sentence, but a sentence that would have basically ruined you.
Yeah.
And now we live in a time where you can almost manage that, which is like unheard of, right? It's unheard of 10 years ago, they were going to manage MS. They have it. But that leads up to this thing, right? Like, so 10 years from now, 50 years from now, who knows where Cody's going to be? You could be in a wheelchair. You could not be walking. You could have a cane. You could be on the walker. So that's what led up to this.
Yep.
You understand, like, there's, like, I had Derek Dunham on. I don't know if you heard that podcast. He's a paraplegic. And did you listen to that podcast?
Yeah, part of it is that the T8 outdoorsman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
T. Outdoorsman.
Yes.
And Derek, and what Derek told me, we become friends over the last like 3 or 4 months. We've hung out at like 3 or 4 different shoots now. I was sitting with him in a fire, and we're talking about this guy just bitching about carrying an elk out. And Derek looks up at me and he's like, "You don't know what I would give to pack an elk out 5 miles." And I was like, "Wow, that hit home." And that's where you find yourself now, right? Like you find yourself like, I've never gone out west. I've never hunted an elk. I've got to do it. So let's get into that. Let's get into this whole how this became about where you get to be the star of this Leopold big hunt film.
Yeah, going off what Derek said, like that's a beautiful problem to have that a lot of people take for granted.
Yeah, 100%.
So, um, yeah, so I have a couple uncles that work for another brand of optics. I'm not going to name names. I used to use their products, and then one time, one of the scopes failed me. And then I started doing a bunch of research before making a big purchase, which I always do, and figured out that Leupold wouldn't fail me in a time of need. So I had already bought, I have a VX6 HD on one of my rifles, and it's just a beautiful piece of glass. And I'd had that for a few years, and I'd always followed Leupold on Instagram and, or no, I take that back, on Facebook and YouTube. I just I actually just started my Instagram like right after I learned I was winning the Project Hunt last year. But uh,
You gotta be an influencer now. You have to just embrace the influencer life now that you're gonna be famous.
yeah, uh, I don't know about that. I'll try my best. Um, with Leupold, I knew like you're getting an American product, and they stand behind their stuff.
Hmm.
I had always watched the Project Hunt series, and I from the time they started, I think 2021 was the first year that they did it. Like from 2021 until last year, I hadn't like went on a hunt where I felt like this is a good enough story or this is a good enough reason for me to even apply for this. Um, and then until last year, I had 6 preference points for elk in Wyoming. And after I was diagnosed, I said to myself, now is the time to go. I don't know what this is going to look like for me in the future. So let's go ahead and use those. I was like kind of buying preference points, which reminds me I have to buy that's now open. I have to buy my first elk
Hmm.
preference point again now that I'm eligible. Um, I was selfishly, I was like, I'll just I'll wait like 10 years and do a limited quota, limited draw area. And then when I was diagnosed, nah, I don't think so. Wyoming has really good general units to begin with, and it's not like I'm going to go out there willy-nilly and just start elk hunting. Like I'm going to save up some money and go with an outfitter. And so I had got that lined up with Eli, and from the times that we talked on the phone before the hunt, I knew he was a good outfitter. Like I heard really good things about him from a couple of his former clients, and now like a couple weeks ago I actually was a reference for a potential new client. They called me up. So um, when you get that good of word of mouth, and like his guides that guide for him, Chip lives in Alaska, Chris lives in Missouri, Jason lives in Nebraska, Colden came from Pennsylvania. Like these guys come in from all over the country to be his guide for him for like a month and a half out of their year. Like that says a lot about your outfitter service. Um, so I had the hunt lined up. Um, like probably, well, this would have been October of 2022. I knew I was going to be drawing a general tag with 6 points. So the hunt was lined up. And then, like, you know, it's right around my birthday in June of 2023. And I keep seeing the Leupold advertisements for Project Hunt. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I actually waited till like the second to last day that I could even apply for that before I actually applied. Not really giving it uh, much thought into winning it. But basically, what happened was a part of the application for that is you have to make a YouTube video of yourself. For me, it was like, hey, I'm Cody Austin. I'm from New Glarus, Wisconsin. Uh, I'm going on an elk hunt this upcoming fall. My dad's going to be coming with. It's our first time going after elk. We're from Wisconsin. Uh, I burned 6 preference points to make this hunt happen because last year I was diagnosed with MS. And in that submission video, I referenced both Randy Newberg. Um, I said how Randy's always said you should go hunting as often as possible because you're gonna run out of
Yep.
health before you run out of money.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I referenced um, sorry, the name's slipping me. Mr. Hairston, former CEO of Kuyu.
Jason
Jason.
Harrison.
Yeah, Jason,
Jason
thank
Harrison.
you. Yeah, I referenced Jason Hairston where like before his passing, um, his Doll Sheep film um, called Don't Wait. I had seen that on Kuyu's YouTube channel where it was is a tribute to him, where it's like, if you have the means to go, just go, because you're not getting
Mhm.
any younger, and you're gonna wish one day you would have went if you don't go to do it. So I referenced both of those guys in my submission for the Leupold Project Hunt, and I actually I set it up on my YouTube channel to where you can only watch the video if you have the link. That way I could audit like how many views it's gotten by the people that are the ones that need to watch it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So it was like I submitted that like the second to last day, and then like a week and a half goes by and I look at it and it's like, oh, you got 5 views. Like, okay, they saw it. That's good to know. And then like I check it like a few days later and it's like it's got 8 views. Like, okay. They watched it again. And then like I checked it a couple more days later and it was like you got 13 views. I'm like, I'm getting through some sort of vetting process here. That's good. And like not long after that, I get an email from Sean Skipper from Leupold saying like, "Hey Cody, we want to interview you for this. When's a good time to interview you?" I'm like, great. So we had that in like early July of 2023, and then that went really well. That was probably about an hour long. It was both Sean Skipper and then Scott Rousseau, both from Leupold. Um, and then over the course of the next, I'd say 10 days, Sean would email me like really specific questions because like with their film permit that they have to get, it's like a bunch of hoops that they have to jump through when filming on public land. That like the questions they were asking were like, do you know how many trucks are going to be parked at the trailhead? Do you know how many trailers are going to be there? Like how many people are going to be in camp? I'm like, you guys are asking really specific questions, and it's like I don't want to have to keep calling up Eli, my outfitter, and asking him these questions without knowing like if I won, because Eli, he's a home builder like outside of being an outfitter, and every
Mhm.
time I'd have to contact him, he was in the middle of building a house. So granted, I was pretty lucky in the sense that he was gracious and patient with my questions, and he was a little um, apprehensive about the idea at first because he had never had like a good experience of someone coming into his camp that was new and having a camera crew. There was like I think he referenced one time he had a couple guys from like Michigan or something come in. They're like, "Yeah, we're gonna be putting our hunt on YouTube," and it was like they were like not professional at all. So he had like one bad experience with a quote unquote camera crew guy there, and I was like, "Well, this is definitely different. Like this is Leupold and Stevens. Like this is." As big a production as you can get in the industry, and he's like, okay, all right.
Mhm.
And I sent him a couple links to like other films that were going to be like this one. And no news is good news. I didn't hear him tell me no. So he he liked what he saw. Leupold liked what they saw. Um, so then August 4th rolls around, which is a year to the day after I was diagnosed with MS. And I remember where I was standing and what I was doing. That was a Friday. I was actually cooking some burgers on the grill, uh, and I had like a spatula in one of my hands, and like I checked my email. I think it was like 12:04 p.m. is what time it came through. And I looked at it and got the email from Sean, and it said, "Congratulations, you've been selected as the Project Hunt winner of 2023." Um, and then the rest is what you're going to be seeing in the film. It was such a learning process. It was such a cool experience having John Bash come and do the um, hometown stuff, where in the film you're going to be seeing me at work, and then also like outside of work, but still around home kind of a thing. That was really awesome. Uh, John's an incredible videographer, an incredible human. He's a great guy. I wouldn't expect anything less of somebody that Leupold has do videography for them.
Yeah. So now you've won this hunt. They've done your hometown video, and
Yep.
now it's time. You and your dad are driving to Wyoming, and you're going to meet Luke Duesenberry for the first time, who we have a mutual friendship with, who I
Yep.
think is the best filmer in the industry when it comes to hunt films. Um, let's get into the hunt. Let's talk about this hunt, man. What happened?
Yeah. So, mom actually came with. My mom wanted to come with, and she was gonna stay like in a nearby Airbnb, I think. Um,
Mhm.
with she could work remotely, so she was able to work remotely while we were in the backcountry, 20 miles away. Um, so it was the three of us. That was really special. Um, Luke calls me. I was actually at Cabela's in Lincoln, Nebraska, or yeah, and he calls me when we're at Cabela's, like the day 2 days before the hunt starts, and I just wanted to get logistics, and that was the first. Well, it's the second time I'd talked to him. First time I talked to him was on like a video conference call with the Leupold guys and John, getting everything set up logistically. Uh, so we had a really nice trip, like out, like road trip out from New Glarus out to. Uh, we stayed we stayed in Pinedale the night before we got to camp, and Pinedale, Wyoming, is just gorgeous. If anyone's ever thinking about going to that area, I'd highly suggest Pinedale. They have like it's just beautiful. The lakes around there are just awesome. And then from Pinedale to Hoback is like a little over an hour, I think. And then so like we get to Hoback, and Eli said, if you want to get a bear tag, there's a good chance we'd see a black bear. So I bought a black bear tag in Hoback at the gas station. And then like their base camp is just a 5 minute drive south of Hoback. And Luke comes in, and I had just got done shooting my rifles the night before the hunt started there at base camp. And they started to pour like really bad. Like it actually turned to sleet then. And it was like there for like a half hour, like typical mountain weather. It was there and gone. And then I have a picture on my phone of this beautiful rainbow, like just right above camp. And Luke rolls in, get to meet him in person for the first time. And I think Luke and I are very, very similar. Like our personalities are similar. Um, we're both empathetic. Uh, and I just knew he was like a really special person.
Mhm.
And so we uh we have a really good meal that night. Um and then the next morning the plan was to wake up like 4:30 and basically hunt our way on horseback from base camp to high camp, which is 11 miles up.
Have you ever
And
ridden horses before?
I'd ridden horses before, but not like that. Not like that. That was I've ridden horses like on like a nice controlled trail, like, easy stuff. And yeah, that I mean, I'm sure there's more intense horseback rides than that in the lower 48, but there's probably not many more intense than that one. Because like you're going from I forget the elevation at base camp, probably around 5,000 feet. I'd have to look, but I know like up at high camp, you're closer to 9,000. And we woke up the first morning of the hunt and it was raining. So we didn't actually get out and go until that afternoon. And so the trail's junk all the way up. Luckily, they have four legs and we have two. But yeah, that was intense, dude. That was a 4 hour horseback ride through. where like country, if you like you look over the side, you're like, if your horse stumbles and goes down that, you better have your feet out of the stirrups and you jump off because you probably wouldn't live. So yeah, that first day was crappy, rainy, but then it gave up, and then we that's when we left. It kind of rained and sleeted and whatnot on the way up, and then we get into camp that evening with light. It was just getting dark, and had dinner. Like for a high camp, 11 miles from base camp or 11 miles from any road, like you don't even have to bring a cup. Like they have solo cups to drink out of, they have bottled water, they have everything except there's no shower up there. But when it's 32 degrees out, you don't really want to take a shower.
Yeah.
You just want to sit by the wood stove, which is in every tent. So,
Now, what is
um,
your goal? So now you've made it to camp or elk hunting. Do you have a I want to shoot this size bull?
yeah, I told Eli, I'm like, I will shoot any legal bull.
Oh, okay. So you were just gonna kill a bull.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I want the meat. I
Okay.
will kill any legal bull. And if like if worse comes to worse, like you can shoot a cow. Like my tag was good for any elk except a spike.
Hmm.
So I could have shot a cow on the last day if I wanted the meat, which I definitely would have.
Hmm.
Um, so I was like, yeah, I told John when John was in Madison filming me when I was getting my infusion. He's like, what do you want to shoot for an elk?" I'm like, "Any legal bull. I'll do it." Like it's my first elk hunt. That's just like with a deer, like your first deer, you probably don't really care the size of it.
Yep. Good for you.
So
Uh,
yeah.
so day
But
one,
yeah,
day one, you're out hunting now. What,
yeah.
so you're out hunting. Are you guys? What kind of style are you guys doing? Are you guys sitting on ridges and glassing? Are you guys moving around a lot? What's going on? How are you guys hunting these things?
Yeah. Moving around a lot. And then like the whole way up, we'd stop every little while and look and glass, get your eyes on anywhere that you saw aspen trees, look because they love the aspen trees. Like if the aspens would meet kind of like a stand of spruce, like they love that edge. They're almost, I don't know, kind of like a whitetail in that sense. They're a little more predictable with like the type of terrain that you might want to find them in.
Hmm.
Um, and so day one is in the books. We go to bed. Uh, Wake up day two at like 4:30. They have a generator up at high camp, so as soon as the generator comes on, it turns all the lights on. Like that's your morning alarm clock. That turned on, and w- we could hear the sleet hitting the roof of the tent. And I don't remember because I was like half awake, but I'm pretty sure like Thomas unplugged the generator then, and we just like, all right, we're all going back to bed because no one wants to go get up at 4:30 and go in this weather because at that point it was sleeting pretty hard, but it wasn't snowing yet. There's snow on the ground, but it was like sleet. And then it switched over to snow, and it snowed from like 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. that day. So we had like 6 inches of snow roughly, uh, which made it pretty picturesque. We got to have all kinds of weather in the first 24 hours we were there. Like it went from 60 degrees at base camp to 28 degrees and snow, sleet, fog. And yeah, it was kind of discouraging to be honest. Like I knew that weather was going to be a factor, especially in early October in the high country of Wyoming. Like that's always going to be a factor. Um, but luckily the hunts are 6 days long, so none of the guides and Eli were like,
Freaking out.
"Man, we need to go find him." And we're like, "We'll find him
Mhm.
probably tomorrow." But um, Tuesday afternoon rolls around and it finally lets up. Then we took like I'd say an hour and a half ride from camp up to get to a good vantage point where, like in the film, you're seeing it from like it's fog, and like the fog would roll through, and then it'd be clear for a little bit, but still cloudy. And we got to a point where we're looking at this mountainside, the mountain on the other side of the drainage, without any snow on it. And Eli is like, the elk have been out every night on this mountain here, the one without any snow on it. So we're sitting there for like a half hour, didn't see any. Uh, just saw mule deer, does, and fawns, which is fine. Um, as beautiful of country as I think you'll find in the lower 48 for sure. Um, and rode back to camp. And one of my favorite parts of the film, and there's a lot of them, but one of my favorite parts, and Luke knows what he's doing. Uh, the banjo starts playing. He has really good banjo in the background of this montage of us going from looking for elk on the second day down to um, back into camp. And there's this part where Luke's behind me, and the humidity's like super high this whole time, cold and damp. And the lights of camp are in front of me, Luke's behind me, and you see my horse breathe, and you could see his breath exhale, and then you see mine exhale off to the side. And like it's such like a small clip, it's like 1 second long, but it's like that was so incredible to see that in the film. And then have dinner that night, go to bed, and day three rolls around, and that's October 4th. And we woke up at 4:30, and that morning was similar to the morning before in the sense that it's really cold, really damp, but it's not snowing. Um, cloudy. A fog was kind of rolling through and rolling out as we were going out on horses to the spot that Eli took us to. And we were only like 45 minutes from camp day three that morning. And um, Luke had really bad luck with his horses. Uh, one horse, he'll tell you it was his fault, but he was wearing his camera bag on his back. He was a little top heavy, and we were kind of going around this corner on the trail, and I kind of like turned around to check him, and I just watched him kind of like make this, and he just like his whole saddle actually turned on the horse, and he fell
Oh
off.
no.
Yeah, luckily it was like in the snow, and it wasn't on top of any rocks, so he was okay. um, on a ride out that day three that morning, he had a different horse that was a little out of shape. It was that horse's first time up to high camp that year, so he was a little sloppy footed. But like on the way out that morning, we got to this ridge, and like the trail is going right on top of the spine of that ridge, and Luke's horse slipped like on like all 4 feet
Oh
slipped,
no.
and like his horse started going down the mountain that way, and Luke just like casually steps off and just like gets off his horse as his horse is like it's slippery grass in the snow, and the horse just goes like 100 yards down the hill, and before he stops, and Luke's just standing there, and Eli's at the front of it's like Eli, me, my dad, Luke, and Eli gets off his horse, and you see Eli like run down, like the horse slide mark is kind of comical all the way down that hill in the snow. Eli runs down there, and the horse at this point is like it's laying down, and its neck is like all curled up against its body, and we're like, that thing dead? Like the way it wasn't moving. It I'm like, did it break its neck on the way down or something? It couldn't have. Eli gets down to it, grabs a hold of the reins, and the horse must have just been like scared to get up without someone helping him. And he pops right up. Eli gets on him and rides him right up to the top where we were again, and it's like, here you go, here's your horseback. Um, and like 20 minutes after that happened, or less, we were just over the ridge that we were heading to, and like from that vantage point straight across the canyon was probably like 1,000 yards. We hadn't seen any elk yet at all. This is probably like 7:30 in the morning ish, and I brought up my binoculars and I just saw like elk asses right across the
Big yellow
canyon. I'm
school
like,
buses.
yeah. And in the snow, it was beautiful. And I get Eli's attention. Told him there's elk right across, and he like brings up his binoculars. He's like, just gives me the head nod. So we take and just ride from where we were down into the timber. And then once we're in the timber, we get off. What I didn't realize was we got off and then we walked up to this like straight drop off. Like it's like straight down. And the elk were shot my bow at 328 yards. And like it was super quiet. There was no wind. And with that snow on the ground and with like the calmness, like you know, voices would carry, any sound would probably carry. Um, and I remember Luke was like off his horse and he had his backpack open, getting his camera gear out, and Luke didn't actually know what was going on yet. And he's like, I need to get ready, kind of a thing. He wanted to have two cameras, and he still didn't really understand what was going on yet because he was at the back of the line and Eli and I were towards the front with our horses. So Eli and I knew there was elk that we were gonna get to see through the timber right here, right across the canyon. And Luke's like, I'm standing there, I'm ready to go. Eli's ready to go. Just we only had to sneak like 80 yards or so down into the timber to get to the spot where I shot him from. And Luke's still like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. So like Eli and I were like, he'll catch up. Like we need to go get our eyes on these elk. So we went down there and Luke went up and he got this really cool shot in the film looking right over our shoulder. Like you can see over our shoulder the elk right on the other side of the canyon from us. And I get ready. I used my backpack as a rest, and then I unstrapped my binocular harness and had my binocular harness as my rest of my butt. Like if you can have two um,
Yeah.
resting points for your rifle, like do it. Like that's as solid as you're going to get.
What are you
Like
shooting?
a bipod
What kind of rifle? Yeah,
for a
which
rifle,
caliber are you shooting? What are you shooting?
30-06,
Attaboy.
as yeah, like it. I actually got that. That's a Christensen Arms rifle, and I put an aftermarket stock on it, so it's it's light. It's beautiful. I got it on sale from Cabela's when it was like $1,400, and those Ridge lines retail for like 2,200 now.
Sweet.
So
Yeah, I'm stoked. So you're shooting 30 out six.
yeah.
That's awesome. What bolts are you shooting?
So I was shooting the 175 grain Barnes
Beautiful. I have
LRX.
those bullets loaded up for
Um,
mine right now, and I think I'm gonna go different bullet, but cool. All right, so now you're on the pack. You're stated. We got the 30-06 coming out west. The 30-06, 328
yep.
yards. All right, let's walk us through this thing.
So I Leupold sent me a scope, even though I didn't ask them to send me a scope. They were like, "Hey, we're gonna send you all this stuff, that you're gonna see in the film," and then they sent me a VX3 scope. That was the one I ended up putting on my Christensen Arms rifle because I had the intention to use my other rifle with my VX6 on it for the hunt, but that one has a 28-inch barrel. Plus, I have a suppressor that wasn't going to
Yeah,
fit
you
in
can't use.
the
Yeah.
scabbard on the horse. Yeah. So I went with the Christensen Arms, knowing that um, shorter, lighter,
Mm-hmm.
just as good.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is hopefully the people that are going to be watching the podcast here are like, they pay attention to it in the film because I was just about to shoot the elk, and then I had the wherewithal at the time to ask Luke if he was filming. And so I'm like, "Are you ready, Luke?" And there was a pause, and he's like, "Yep." And like there was less than a second between the time he said "Yep" and when I shot, because I was putting pressure on the trigger, knowing that he was gonna tell me at some point, and like, you're so hyper focused on that like as soon as he gave me the go, like the bullet was going. And what's cool with the suppressor is like if you've never shot suppressed, I wouldn't recommend shooting like recreationally
Yeah.
without earplugs in when you're shooting suppressed. But like when you're in the hunting situation, you shoot suppressed, like it doesn't blow out your ears, doesn't make your ears ring. Um, you can hear the bullet hit whatever you're shooting at. Even at 330 yards, we heard the bullet hit. Like you can hear it in the film too. Like you can hear the bullet hit the the elk, and it's pretty awesome. And so I send that. I get him right behind the shoulder where I'm aiming, and he goes up the mountain. Like he's heading up the mountain. I reload, and I didn't know because when I reloaded, I expected him to be further up, like he's going uphill. Well, he actually turned and came downhill with the cows he was with, and I didn't know that, so I didn't see him go down. I didn't know which direction he went. I was just ready to put another one in him, and Eli's like, "You hit him. He's fallen. He's going down. He's down." And what you don't see on the film is Eli's like, "Stay, you got to stay on your rifle," because I had popped up to try to look with my binoculars where the heck he went. I didn't know
Mhm.
where he went, and he's like, "No, stay on the rifle." I'm like, "I don't know. I can't be on the rifle up to know where he went." But
They will
no, it
stand
worked.
up.
It
Like
worked
my
out
kid shot
perfect.
one this year, 300
Yeah,
and I think it was like 320 yards, or 300 something like that, 317 yards. He shot it,
yeah,
thing fell down in his tracks. Bam! It was a cow.
yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh, yeah," they're kinda cheering,
Uh,
all of a sudden, stands back up. He shot him 2 more times, and she died. You know, it's they will stand up. They are dead on their feet. Man, that's awesome. So you get over
yeah.
there, what's this bull look like? What kind of bull did you shoot?
He was a six
Nice.
point. Um, like there's probably a herd of 15 to 20 he was with, and he was like the herd bull of that herd. Like at that distance, like when Luke's got the shot of it over our shoulders looking over across, like he's not zoomed in at all,
Mhm.
but like in that part of the film, like pay attention, you can actually see him with the naked eye, like that's him. He was bigger than anything else out there. And I ended up scoring him, and I don't score animals professionally, but when I measured him up, he was right at
Nice.
270. So that's a heck of a nice bull. Definitely bigger than what I was planning on killing. Um, like I said, I would have been thrilled with any legal bull. And so like the recovery was in the film. Like where I shot him from over across the canyon, uh, 330 yards, but to get down and over and then up, like that's probably like a
Yep.
half mile because the straight drop and then back up. I remember getting up to where we recovered him from, and I took my rangefinder, which has like the angle
Yeah.
in it, and it was a 30. I think it was a 35-degree angle down to where the horses were
Mhm.
below us. But luckily, we got to get him cut up and in game bags, and all we had to do was go down. We didn't have to go up; we just go down. So that was pretty easy. Um, yeah, Luke got incredible shots on the recovery, like going up to him, cutting him up, getting him down. Like I had about, I would say probably about 80 pounds of meat on my Sitka pack that was on me, in my like all the trimmings, like the neck cuts, the tenderloins, the back straps, everything. All of those cuts were in my Sitka pack on me, and then I was carrying his head, And because I was getting a shoulder mount of him, I had like the cape with it and everything. And so his head and everything was probably another 100 pounds. And so I had like 180-ish pounds, which was at the time I was like 170. Luckily, like I said, I didn't have to go up a slope at all. We were just kind of side hilling back and forth, switchbacking on the way down because of how steep it was. But yeah, that was that was incredible. Like, I wish everybody that goes elk hunting could have that sort of experience for the first time killing an elk. So I felt extremely grateful and lucky that that's all how
Yeah,
it
man,
played
it was an
out.
incredible story, a incredible film to watch, and Luke really captures it. One of my favorite parts is just your dad, and he tears up, right? Like this has to be like a
Yeah.
couple times he
Couple
tears
times.
up. I think he tears up in the beginning too, like when they're talking to him, and his son. I mean, that's got to be. I have 5 kids. Like hearing that about my kids, like you get the worst thoughts in your head, even though you're fighting this thing and it's awesome. Your instant thoughts is like, I don't want to outlive my son. Like he gets to do this with you, and that's incredible, right? And get out there and to still be able to go out there and
Hmm.
do it with you and kill this bull. You could tell it meant almost seems like it means more to him than it did to you. He seemed so happy for you to have this happen.
I think it I think it did. Like, I'm not a parent, but I would imagine that if I was a parent and I learned that my kid had an incurable disease, like there'd be a big part of me that would always wonder what could I have done differently to prevent that from happening to you. And I've never actually asked my parents like if that's how they feel, but I would imagine there's a little bit of what could we have done as differently as parents like that could have helped prevent our
Mhm.
child from getting this. But there's nothing. Like, I had a I have a great life. I have a great support system of people that love me around me. And that's all. Like, at the end of the day, I try to think about like how lucky I actually am that I have people that love me. I do a job that I love. I have really good benefits that make this very comfortable, I will say, to have for a disease. Um, there's a lot of people that are not in the position that I am, and I try to keep that in mind and not take anything for granted. Um, the film itself is named Straight and Narrow because I told John and I told Luke both, like, I never felt like I was a bad person before I was diagnosed. Like, I legitimately try to be a person that makes good choices, especially when it comes to people that I care about around me. And I felt like after I was diagnosed, like, I was diagnosed for a reason. I think that was God's way of telling me, like, you should just keep in mind how great your life actually
Mhm.
is. That's at least that's how I view it. Is, hey, you, you're doing okay, but I think you can do a little better. So that's kind of how I kind of look at my life now. It's like, don't take anything for granted.
Yeah, man,
So
that's a great way to end this thing right there. Cody Austin, your hump film's coming out in I think October this year. Straight and Arrow from Leopold.
yeah,
You're an inspiration. It's awesome to hear you on here. I hope people listening to this hear it and they get out there and they hunt this year. They hear it and they say, "I'm just going to go hunting. I'm going to go out with my kids. I'm
yep,
going to do it," because you never know when something this is going to happen. And man, you're taking it with a grain of salt, and you're just
yep,
making the best out of your life. And I'm stoked for you. I'm happy for you, and excited to get to know you. And hopefully, I get to see you again. Hopefully, I see you at Big Sky Tack next year. And actually, you're shooting this year.
yep.
Yeah,
We will definitely. It was great to meet you there and meet everybody that I got to meet there. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I hope that my story can be a little bit of inspiration for everyone listening. Like, don't wait to go do the things that you want to do. Just go do them.
that's awesome.
Just go
Thanks,
do them.
dude.